It was one of those warm spring Fridays when the house just felt more alive than usual. The air carried a promise of weekend fun, and my 12-year-old son, Ethan, couldn't stop bouncing around the living room in excitement. He had been waiting for this night all week, the night his best friend, Mason, would be coming over for a sleepover. As a mom, I loved seeing my son happy, and Mason had always been a polite, well-behaved boy whenever he visited. He and Ethan had grown close over the past year, since they met in school. They were inseparable, and I could tell their friendship was the kind that lasts a lifetime. I had spent the afternoon making snacks, popcorn, mini pizzas, and a few of their favorite sodas chilled in the fridge. My husband, Greg, was working late that night, so it was just me, Ethan, and Mason for the evening. When Mason arrived around 6, his mom, Clara, came up to the door to drop him off. She gave me a warm smile and thanked me again for hosting. I reassured her that Mason was always welcome and that they were going to have a great time. As soon as she drove off, the boys raced up the stairs to Ethan's room, their laughter echoing through the hallway. Upstairs, they had already set up their game consoles and were plugging in controllers. I smiled, remembering my own childhood sleepovers, staying up too late, talking about nonsense, and laughing until my stomach hurt. I knocked on the door and peeked in. They turned toward me with sheepish grins, already surrounded by pillows and snacks. "Dinner in an hour," I said, smiling. "Don't fill up on chips." "Yes, ma'am," Mason said respectfully, while Ethan just nodded, already distracted by the game on screen. I closed the door behind me and headed downstairs to tidy up a bit before starting dinner. An hour later, the smell of baked mac and cheese filled the kitchen. I called the boys down, and they came rushing, still in their game zone, but clearly hungry. We sat together at the kitchen table. It was nice having Mason there. He always said please and thank you, never talked back, and seemed genuinely grateful for everything. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said mid-bite, "this is the best mac and cheese I've ever had." I chuckled. "Thank you, Mason. You're always so polite." Ethan rolled his eyes playfully. "He's just trying to get seconds." Mason laughed. "It's working, isn't it?" After dinner, they went back upstairs, and I relaxed in the living room with a book. Around 9, I called up to remind them it was almost time to get ready for bed. I didn't expect them to sleep anytime soon, but brushing teeth and changing into pajamas was at least something I could get them to do before the late-night chatter began. A little later, Mason came downstairs with a puzzled look. Mrs. Reynolds? Do you have any extra blankets? Ethan's room is kinda cold." "Of course," I said, getting up. "Let me grab one from the hall closet." As I handed it to him, I noticed how much taller he'd gotten since the last time he stayed over. Kids grow up fast, and Mason looked like he'd had a growth spurt in just a few months. His voice was deeper too, and he carried himself a little more maturely. I smiled at him. "You boys need anything else?" He shook his head.
"No, ma'am."
"Thank you." I went back to my book, and the house settled into a quiet hum. Occasionally, I heard bursts of laughter from upstairs, but nothing too wild. At least they weren't trying to sneak outside or make a fort out of furniture like last time. Around midnight, I was just about to go to bed when I heard light footsteps in the hallway. I got up, thinking it was Ethan, but instead it was Mason, standing near the stairway with an awkward expression. "Everything okay?" I asked. He nodded but hesitated. Kind of. I didn't want to wake up Ethan, but I forgot to bring a charger, and my phone's dead. Is it okay if I borrow one?" I led him to the kitchen and handed him one of the spare chargers. "Here you go. You can plug it in downstairs if you want. There's a spot near the couch." "Thanks. Sorry for the trouble." "No trouble at all," I said. He stood there for a second before saying, "You're really nice, Mrs. Reynolds. My mom works a lot, so I don't get a lot of nights like this." His words caught me off guard. There was a sincerity in his voice that tugged at me. I gave him a soft smile. "I'm glad you're here, Mason. You're always welcome. And your mom is doing her best. I know she loves you a lot." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Yeah, I know she does. It's just sometimes it's really quiet at home." There was a heaviness in the way he said it, like something he was trying not to show. I didn't pry, but I gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder and told him to try to get some rest. He thanked me again and went back upstairs. The next morning, the house was buzzing with energy by 7. I heard Ethan and Mason stomping around upstairs before they rushed down for breakfast. I made pancakes, which vanished as quickly as I flipped them onto plates. Mason looked more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. After breakfast, I let them play outside in the yard. They tossed a football around and played tag until their faces were flushed and their clothes grass-stained. I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching them. Later, as they sat on the grass catching their breath, Mason looked up at me and smiled. "This has been the best weekend in a long time." I smiled back. "We're glad you're here, Mason. You bring a good energy to the house." Ethan teased, "Yeah, now maybe Mom will let you move in." Mason laughed and then looked at me like he was actually wondering if that were possible. It broke my heart a little, realizing just how much he craved a stable, warm place to land. When it was time for him to go, his mom arrived right on time. Clara looked tired, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. But when Mason ran to hug her and told her all about the weekend, she smiled like it was the first good moment she'd had in days. She turned to me. "Thank you. He really needed this." "Anytime," I said genuinely. "He's a great kid." That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, I sat on the couch with Greg and told him about everything. He nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like that boy could use a little more support." I agreed. So we made a quiet decision that day. Mason would always have a place in our home, whenever he needed it. Over the months that followed, Mason came over more often. Sometimes it was just for dinner, other times for weekends. We became an extension of his family. He helped me in the kitchen, played board games with Ethan, and even began opening up more about school, life, his dreams. One night, after dinner, he stayed behind while Ethan went upstairs. We sat at the table, sipping cocoa, and he said, "I want to be the kind of adult like you and Mr. Reynolds. People who care about others." I was quiet for a moment. "You're already on your way, Mason. Just by being aware of how you want to be. That's powerful." He smiled, and I saw in him a light that I knew would shine even brighter as he grew older. Years later, Mason would graduate high school with honors. He'd stand on stage, tall and confident, and when he gave his speech, he would mention us, his second family. But all of that started with one sleepover. One simple night where laughter, kindness, and a warm meal opened the door to something lasting.